Your media, where you are. Get ready, steady, and let's set those body goals. Your Health Fix with Mo, a body and mind journey to a healthier you.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to the another episode of the Health Fix with me, your host Mo. I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't done this show in a long time. Sure, and Candice was on my case for the hour now, slacking off, dog.
Yeah.
But I have to, readjust the content because
Yeah.
I felt like it was a lot of buff-
Readjusting.
a lot of buffness happening. Like we were just
Yeah.
talking fitness jargon.
Yeah.
And I was just losing direction. So I had to, rethink the content.
And it's always good to rethink
Yeah.
and re-strategize. So welcome back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I had a chat with Candice last week. We were like,
Mhm.
there's some topics, dude, that you really do need to cover.
Yeah.
And today is one of them. It's a topic that I'm very interested in, and I'll tell you why, because I'm very selfish.
Okay.
First reason, I've got sisters, and whenever they'd ask me about periods or to buy them something, I'd always cringe because also as a teenager, you don't even know what's happening.
Right.
You're like, ooh.
What
You know?
do you say? Yeah.
It's two different stages. Cause
Yeah.
my one sister is 4 years younger than me, and then
Mhm.
the other one is 16 years younger than me.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd cringe with the first one, but the other one would be afraid to ask me to actually get her that stuff. She's like, oh, I can't ask him. But how do I ask my brother to ask to buy me that stuff? How do I tell him I'm on my period?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I'm having this conversation with Candice because she is the minister of menstruation, in case you guys didn't know. I've got horns here.
Yeah.
Yay, look at that.
Yeah. You re-strategized.
Yes.
You wrote the horns. You
Yes.
got love to see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ladies, I'm talking to Candice Chirwa today, and we're going to talk about period health.
Mhm.
We're talking of everything from food during periods, exercise during periods, emotions. Because I think as gents, we downplay most of these things.
Yeah.
We're like, it's probably on her period.
Yeah.
But we really don't know what we're saying.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So this is it's gonna be an informative one for me.
Okay.
I'm just going to be asking questions.
That's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
And then some of them might be stupid. I don't know.
And there's no stupid question when it comes to periods, because I feel like with men in particular, there's just been a conditioning that boys and men shouldn't talk about it. So I never tell someone, oh, your questions are stupid, or I never go, oh, that's such a weird question to ask, because you've been conditioned to not talk about these things. So there's no stupid question. There's no stupid question.
And so because we are on a platform that caters mostly for ladies, right? I'm hoping this show will give them courage to show it to other men who are their friends or who are in their families, to
100%.
say, listen, gents, this is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
This is how we actually feel when this time of the month comes. So let's get it started.
Okay.
I've been in the fitness industry for a long time.
Okay.
Right? And most of my clients have been females over the years.
Okay.
And so I've been guilty of also downplaying them canceling sessions because of
their period.
You know what I mean? Like, especially when I was young, I'm like, but you get that every month.
Yeah. You should get used to it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, our goals, dude. You know what I mean? So, and to a point where I had to find a way to integrate it into the programs. Like, okay, I had to know when my client's cycle was. Like, okay, her cycle is usually around this time.
Yeah.
And then, so I can plan around doing that. So I take a week off then, so we can do that next week. Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
How do you feel
on my period?
Yeah, like
look. So let me say this, because I think it's also very important to note that, we're living in a COVID world. So my period before I got the vaccine was 8 days long. 4 days heavy, and in 3 days medium to light.
Yeah.
4 days, yeah. So it was about 7 to 8 days. Usually, like I always say 8 days because the last day when I think it's done, it always just goes surprise.
Yeah.
And then you're like, so this was before COVID, and it was because I have the contraceptive, the IED. It's a copper IED. It's a small T-shaped device that sits in your uterus, and basically I can't have kids until 2028, right? And so the IED for the first 6 months of it, causes heavy periods. But I've also found that since I've had it, my periods have become a little bit heavier, which I can easily manage. I'm totally fine with that. After my second jab of the vaccine, I realized that my periods became shorter, and I only have 2 heavy days, and I only menstruate for like 5 days, which is great. But what happens now is that compared to my period before the jab, I used to have like days of fatigue. So it would be stretched out over a period of time. Whereas now after the jab, I have 1 day where the cramps hit me, the fatigue hits me, and I'm emotional. It's a lot. Like, so everything hits me in 1 day. So yeah, for me, how I feel, and I know this is a disclaimer I always put, is that everyone's periods are different, is that if I want to prioritize, because I've tried, surprisingly enough, last year I tried a challenge where I was like, let me actually work out consistently, and also work out consistently on my period.
Okay.
And I found that working out consistently on my period, there were a couple of days, like 2 or 3 days with my period, which were usually my heavy days, where I said, I'm going to sit this one out. But I found that I didn't have as intense cramps if I consistently worked out before my period started and after my period.
Okay.
So I enjoyed that. However, now that this jab situation has happened, I feel the fatigue and I feel really tired. And so trying to put working out there when I can't even like think of leaving the bed is totally different. So yeah, that is my period. How I feel is I don't know. Every month, the thing is, I just wish we could just get a text message just to say we're not pregnant, because essentially our periods are our egg not being fertilized, and then it's the shedding of the egg with the uterine lining. That is why that is it. So for me, it's like, can we not just get a text message? Can we not just get a post in the mail and we move on to the next month? No, we have to go through a combination of a lot. So like, I experience bloatingness, I experience headaches, I experience fatigue, I have not mood swings, but I depression hits, cravings, just a lot. It's a lot.
Sure. Yeah, you said a lot.
I always say a lot. You knew what you're signing up for.
So we're going to break that down first before we go further.
Yeah.
Because I want us all to understand. By the time we're done here, I want us to just understand as much about periods as we possibly can.
Right.
So you said there's a difference between heavy.
Yeah.
When you say heavy, and then there's light, and then there's a period of time where there's menstruation. Yeah. That's what you mentioned.
Menstruation is the process of your uterine lining shedding the shedding itself. So that's the blood.
Okay.
So the heavy refers to the amount of blood, like the flow.
Okay.
Heavy flow. So you get people who will have 2 days light flow and then 3 days medium flow, and then you get me who has like 3 days. No. Now it's 2 days heavy flow and then 3 days medium to light, and that refers to the amount of blood that is leaving your vagina due to the uterine lining. So think of it this way. Every month, what happens is that we go through a cycle. The cycle isn't your period. Your period is the process of blood breaking down. Your cycle is your reproductive cycle, getting ready to basically have a baby.
Okay.
So every month, what happens is that within the female reproductive system, there is the ovaries, and the ovaries carry a certain amount of eggs.
Okay.
And one egg is released every month, usually during the middle of the cycle, and that is called ovulation. So what happens is that egg will travel down to the middle of the uterus, and then as it's traveled down to the middle of the uterus, the uterine lining builds up because it wants to essentially make room, or a comfy room, for a baby in the event that the sperm meets the egg, and then that uterine lining has built enough sort of like, what can I say? I don't know what the actual word is, but cushioning essentially for the baby to grow in the uterus. If there's no sperm, what happens is that the egg, I like to say to kids, it dissolves away, but it breaks down with the uterine lining, and the uterine lining essentially becomes the period blood.
Yeah.
And that's how we get our period.
Okay.
Now, the amount of blood we have is dependent on the amount of hormones you have in your body.
Okay.
So I started puberty very early. I started at the age of 10. So I have had consistently a very heavy period. But now with the IUD, I also still have a heavy period. So it varies from person to person. And so when someone says I have a heavy flow, it is not referencing their rap game. It is actually just referencing, the amount of blood, the amount of blood they lose every time they menstruate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about a lot of things.
Okay.
We're going to talk about exercise during your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about sex during your menstrual
Okay.
cycle. And we're going to talk about cravings as well.
Yes.
Like what do you crave personally? What have you experienced, or what have you heard some of your other friends crave, and how you'd like to be treated as ladies during this time. Because we need to know.
Yeah.
Well, I need to know. I'm preparing myself to be somebody's future husband.
Yay! Okay. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about, are there any health risks for exercising while on your period?
There aren't any health risks, and I think that it's a period myth. So the whole notion of period myths are, for me, just like a long list of misinformation that let menstruators feel like they should just isolate themselves and not do anything.
Yeah.
And that comes from a very violent place, in that, there's this notion that period blood is dirty, and, if you come into contact with a menstruator, you'll be dirty and all that jazz. But science, medicine, biology has shown that when you actually do work out, you do get that release of endorphins. And especially on your period, the endorphins really do help with a specific, they help, what is it? Not inflame, minimize. There's a hormone called prostaglandins, which is essentially the cramp hormone that makes you feel crampy. So when you work out, you actually reduce the amount of cramps you experience.
Okay.
Now, what I tell people who are consistent gym bunnies is that one thing that you need to be very mindful of when you are working out is that you are losing amount of blood, so you can feel fatigued. So you can't really overexert yourself. And so when you are having heavy days, I would then say that it's probably best to just do like light training. So light training can refer to being on the treadmill, running, jogging. I wouldn't include any form of weights within this unless you feel like you could handle it. But it's really just that, like your light intensive cardio, where you feel like you are working up a sweat, but you're not going to collapse after you work out. And then as your heavy days are over and you get to your lighter days, then you can start going back to your regular schedule of, okay, if I want to include weights, I can. If I want to do, the cycling class or the, Zumba class, you can. I just think it's always important to be in sync with your body and listen to what your body's telling you. So for instance, when I work out, I tend to do more of the lighter modifications of the workouts, like with the Chloe Ting things. I love the guided workouts. I won't lie. Like if I go to the gym, I'll just sit and I don't know what I'm doing. So I tend to do the light modifications, and rather exerting myself, adding weights or adding those weight bags, I just prefer to just keep it light. Or I'd rather just go on a treadmill and just walk more kilometers than I thought I would. And that's dependent on how I feel. And that's dependent on if I'm not feeling crampy, if I'm not feeling tired, so I think it varies from person to person. And for me personally, I just think that you should do whatever you want to do on your period. So don't let your period stop you from swimming. If you are a person who loves swimming, and you think, oh, I can't swim on my period because I use a sanitary pad. No, then use a tampon or use a menstrual cup and you can still swim. There's just a lot of like misinformation that is surrounding us that makes us feel like we can't do anything and we should just hide in a hole. And that's not the case. So if you do want to work out, but I would say work out to not overexert yourself.
So let's talk about the different alternatives. You talked about pads, you talked about tampons, and you talked about a cup.
Yes.
So obviously there's nothing that's better than the other one.
Yeah.
It's just preference.
Yeah.
It's just what somebody prefers, right?
It's what somebody prefers, but also the reality in the country that we live in is that a lot of menstruators are forced to just use one product because the other products are stigmatized. So your tampon and your menstrual cup are stigmatized purely because people feel that it will break someone's virginity or hymen, and that's not the case. Whereas when you use a menstrual cup or a tampon, you can do things like you can swim, it lasts longer, and it's just easier to use. Sometimes you don't get that irritation that you would with a sanitary pad, right? It doesn't feel damp. It doesn't feel so. There are other options, but if you feel that look, I don't want to insert anything, you can use a reusable pad. You can use period underwear. There's a lot of period innovations and products that exist in the market. I just think what's important in establishing like a period positive world is saying that, when you teach a young girl, you've just started menstruating. You're not just saying use a sanitary pad for the rest of your life. You're saying these are the different period products that exist. These are the ways you use them, and it's up to you as to how you feel comfortable and what you want to use them for. Don't ever think that, it's okay to form some form of fear around these products, to say never use a tampon. To use a tampon, you're never going to get married because you're not going to be a virgin. I mean, Liz,
has that ever been said by anybody?
Yeah, I mean, all the workshops I do, when I show a tampon or a menstrual cup, the first thing the girls ask is, "Will it break my virginity?"
Oh, damn!
Because there's that emphasis on a purity of a woman, and she needs to. We're going to get into another episode. But I just think there's a lot of period products that exist. Yeah. And for instance, I just discovered period underwear. And there's these period underwears where you can actually wear them whilst you're working out because it's a sculpt range. So they actually look like gym shorts, but they actually also absorb your period blood. It's so amazing. Like how many different things there are out there. And I just think it's just a matter of, surrounding yourself with people who openly talk about these things and share that information.
So what, as a man, what are the questions I should be asking if I'm asked to go buy period products for a woman?
So definitely that flow thing. So if she says, I prefer this specific brand of pads, then you'll ask her, okay, so what flow? Is it heavy to medium or medium to light or whatever? And she'll be like, no, I want the heavy flow. And maybe she would say, I want the nighttime ones. So when you look at the packaging, it'll tell you this is nighttime, good for 8 hours. And usually on the products, it'll tell you like the absorbency of saying heavy flow with the amount of drops. So if it's all the drops are full, it means it's heaviest flow. So that's the first thing you ask them, like what brand would you like? What flow? And then usually the best thing to ask them is like, okay, what is the color of the packaging? Because usually they'll say, oh, it's black and red, or it's yellow, or it's pink. That makes it easier. But I always just advise that, as women as well, when you are shopping and doing your toiletries, bring your boyfriend with or your partner with, and just to say, if there's ever a day I need you to get me these products for me, these are the ones that I want. Just so that they know, even if they're in your vicinity in your house or whatever, and you're like, oh, these are my tampons, this is the product I want, just so that you know. Because just in the case of an emergency, they can just quickly run to a shop and they know. They're not just standing there looking and shaking and then they feel embarrassed. And also, men, we know when you're buying these products, we know they're not for you. So don't be embarrassed, So I think it's also establishing that clear form of communication. And I do always say that with men, when they want to know how to be better menstrual allies, it's just always asking, what can I do to help? Because there's days when we'll just be like, literally the sight of men bother us so much. The fact that you're breathing is an annoyance that we're like, just leave us alone, you know, and respect that. Because what we're literally going through is hormonal fluctuations. But then there's days when we're like, okay, I need all the hugs, all the cuddles. Please get me chicken licking. Please get me whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think just respect that, but always just ask if you know your partner is menstruating. Just the first thing you ask is, what can I do to help?
This is the Health Fix with Mo, and today I'm talking to Candice Chirwa. We're talking all things period. So period health, period education. She's educating me, us.
Yes. The daughter, the mejitas.
Listen, daughter.
Yes.
You ladies, take this video and show it to your daughter.
Yes.
So that they can be educated.
True.
I'm going to leave here much smarter. So let's go into, here's another thing, another topic about periods, which has a lot of myths.
Okay.
Sex.
Okay.
During periods. Some people say it's nicer during your period. Some people say it's taboo to have it during your period. Which one is it? Some people say it's so like what is it? What is it? Which one is it?
It is what you want it to be. And I say this to the menstruator. If you want to have period sex, then you can.
Yeah.
However, what is important to note about period sex is that, okay, so first thing I need to make, like, you know, Mother Nature is so wild that when we are menstruating, because we experience hormonal fluctuations, we also will feel very frisky.
Yeah.
So there's just that sometimes we're just like, hey, like we just want to do the things. We just want the parts to be done. We want the clove things to be happening.
Yeah.
And you have to get over your form of fear and taboo of why period sex is disgusting first, before then you have that conversation with your partner. So for me, what I need to say from an objective point of view or from a medical point of view is that period sex does a lot of great things. Firstly, it's there's no need for foreplay because there's lubrication, right?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Just like lubricate. Yeah.
Sure.
On flow. The things are flowing.
So you can just
It's natural. Yeah.
Pop it in.
Pop it in. But also what happens is that if a menstruator experiences an orgasm, that reduces cramps. It also reduces, any form of period symptom that they're experiencing. So headaches, fatigue, they just feel a little bit greater because an orgasm is,
who does not like orgasm?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of tips that, if you are going to engage in the realm of period sex, that you should know. So there are people who say they prefer to do it in the shower because simply, it's also, I just want to say this, you're not going to see the period blood. It's not like, anyway. So if you're in the shower, you can do it in the shower. Just make sure that you're not slipping all over and breaking anything. But if you are going to do it, in different positions on the bed or a couch, then it's advised that you put a towel underneath or you have a red blanket or whatever. And then I do recommend that when you are engaging in period sex, that you do have condoms available. It's just always best to practice safe sex because at the end of the day, our cervix are dilated, and so also it's not to say that period blood is dirty, but just to protect both of you. It's very important. And I don't know, like for me, I just find it, I don't know, maybe because the natural lube is there. It's nice.
The smile on your face was like,
it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah.
I just find it more heightened. I don't know why. Like not to say general sex is not, but like period sex is just, it's great.
Is it? Do you think it's because maybe all of your feeling, your senses are?
I think so.
You just feel everything.
I think so. But I really do enjoy it, and I also I think when I used to, because I'm single.
Yeah.
I'm single, so I don't, But when I used to dabble with period sex, it was also a very nice time to put out scented candles and be, it was nice. It was a nice time to be intimate.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah.
Would you do it and then you'd be like, I'm done. You can go now.
No, never. I don't know about others, but and this is in general, I always just want cuddles afterwards. So,
is it?
Nah.
So let's talk about that in in the working environment as well.
Okay.
Period health in the working environment, because
Yeah.
obviously we work with ladies in the office as well, and we need to acknowledge that our females will go through a time of the month that that they do. What do we as gents? So first of all, how do we open a platform for them to say, listen, guys, I'm going through this right now. Don't bother me. Or what do we do? Like, do we?
I think it speaks to the workplace culture that exists. So each and every organization and company will be different, but I do think that there needs to be a lot of external pressure being put on HR practitioners within those companies to say that there needs to be first a policy in which menstruators can take off leave especially if they have very intense period conditions. So if they have endometriosis, PCOS, it's really important for them to just say, I will work from home, you know? But then I also do think that there needs to be some form of sensitivity training that takes place in the typical workplace setting, that each and every person, male, female, however they identify, need to understand that every month this will happen to maybe half of the workforce. And so it is important that in particular men don't use that as an opportunity to weaponize and make them feel invalidated or make them feel less than. I mean, there's so many jokes I've heard where men will be like, you're very moody or emotional. Are you on the rag? It's like, even if I'm not on the rag, maybe consider that my moods are valid or my emotions to a certain thing at work are valid, right? So I think there's just some form of sensitivity training that has to take place. And that is something that HR practitioners have to do. In my recent period book, Flow, we spoke to an HR practitioner to get their sense of like, you know, how do we see a period positive world in the workplace? And she said majority of HR practitioners in this country are women. And it's so interesting that herself as a woman hasn't thought about establishing a period positive world. And she menstruates. And it just shows how deeply conditioned we are to remain silent on these things. So obviously it means that in our workplaces, we have to then put the pressure internally, or as activists myself have to put the pressure externally to say this is what we need to be doing in the workplace. But I think with men in particular, if you see that your colleague is having a difficult time, don't just attack them like, oh, it's maybe you're on your period or something. Just say, what can I do to help? Is there anything you need from me? Are you okay? Would you like to talk about it? I think coming through with a form of sincerity and not really necessarily any form of criticism or judgment is a really good place to start. I think that's
I mean, that's simple enough, right?
I think so. Choose kindness.
Yeah, I mean,
and not violence.
I mean, you want it nana, chocolate nana.
All of it.
Okay, another thing I'm really interested in is, because it's always been something that's just been said, but I don't think a lot of people know what it actually means.
Okay.
PMSing.
Yes. Premenstrual syndrome.
Yes. So this is when you can feel that your
period is about to start. Yes.
How
we go through the most.
You guys do go through the most.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we were growing up, one of my cousins would be really this is a time of her life where she'd be really irritable around this time. You know what I mean? And she'd explain this thing to me like, dude, this is. But she was fine during her period,
right?
But her PMS was.
It was a lot.
Is it different for different women?
Yes, it is. So you get PMS and then you get PMDD, and I just didn't get. I always get the terminology incorrect, but PMDD is like PMS on steroids. So everything you feel when the week before your period is more amplified. So if you experience mood swings if you have PMDD, it's like more amplified. Everything's more sensitive. When we do experience, because PMS means premenstrual syndrome, so we're experiencing all of the symptoms we would experience on our period the week before our actual bleeding happens. So for instance, with me, when I PMS, I I have the fatigue, I have the bloating, I have very swollen and tender boobs. It's a lot. And then your period starts, so you take all the symptoms you experience on your PMS and you add it with bleeding. Basically.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I understand why you just want to text.
Hey?
Because
I understand why we have to bleed.
Yeah.
The bleeding is okay. Personally, I'd just be fine with the bleeding.
Yeah.
But all the other symptoms are just bullying. Honestly, it's just bullying.
Mother Nature's just like,
hey,
come through. Let me talk to you for a minute.
I'm like, what's going on here? It's too much.
Because someone was trying to explain what the pain feels like. One of my friends was trying to explain what the pain feels like to me. He's like, have you ever been kicked in the balls? I was like, yeah. Like, imagine that.
And it goes on and off.
Yeah.
So, also, interesting fact that I discovered earlier this year is that when we experience period cramps, our cervix is dilated from 2 to 4 centimeters. When you give birth, your cervix dilates at 10 centimeters. So we are like semi having like a contraction when we have a period cramp.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
So that's literally your body preparing you for pregnancy.
Yes.
Sure. The Healthfix with Mo. Talking about period health with the Minister of Menstruation, Candice Chirwa. Talking all things period. Sheesh.
Yeah, we go through
Let's
a lot.
talk about what are some of your cravings during your periods?
The whole thing. The whole thing. She what? The whole thing. Okay, like, yo, guys.
Yeah.
Yo, I can list brands, ne?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can.
Rockamama's.
Yeah.
And I can tell you exactly what I want from
Yeah.
Rockamama's. The Rockstar Bagel with the caramelized onions, the fries, and then the Oreo milkshake.
Yeah.
Okay, that. Yes.
It's the spot.
It hits the spot.
Yeah.
Basically, all the foods that I want are itis-inducing foods so that I can sleep through my period. Because I just can't deal. Don't hit me with that. Oh my God, you should have salads. I know you should, Rebecca or Karen or whatever. I
Shut
know,
up.
but
Yeah.
no. Okay. So what I do find interesting, though, is that I have managed my cravings. So instead of having these foods like every day, I would have them for the cycle of my period. I'd be like, okay, so if I'm menstruating for 5 days, I will on day 3 or my heaviest day have my cheat meal.
Yeah.
But what I do find is that I have my go-to. So I love drinking ginger tea with honey.
Okay.
Because ginger tea is an anti-inflammatory, so it makes your cramps reduce.
Mm-hmm.
I also love eating bananas because bananas also anti-inflammatory, reduces your cramps. It also is a little bit of a mood booster. I refrain from coffee, which is so hard.
Ooh, that must be tough for you. Yeah, it's so.
It's so hard. It's so hard, guys.
Candice loves her coffee.
Guys.
Yeah.
If you had to look at my bank statements.
It's just coffee.
Yeah.
Starbucks, Seattle,
bootlegger, fatherland, motherland. Yeah, all of them. I'm just there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I reduce coffee because the caffeine is an exaggerant for the cramps. So instead of coffee, I would then have tea. And usually the ginger tea. So, and then I also drink a lot of water. Purely because I find the more water you drink on your period, the less heaviness you experience. And yeah, it just makes me feel like, okay, I'm a little bit lighter. The bloatedness is not there as much. I also try to reduce my salt intake because salt, carries that water retention, so then it increases the bloatedness. So there are a lot of things you have to be very mindful of. And it was something that I was doing last year lockdown, where I was creating threads at least like every month about foods to avoid, foods to have, and we need to also realize that we're losing blood, so you also have to replace that with iron. So you have to be eating your spinach, your veggies, your green veggies, your steak if you are a meat eater. yeah, so there's things I'm very mindful of when I am menstruating, and I think what I always just tell people is that this is your time and your period to rest.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself. If
Yeah.
there's just been a day where you just wanted to sleep. Just
Nothing
sleep.
wrong.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
You mentioned earlier that you go sometimes go into a depressive state when you during your that time.
Yeah.
Is it a common thing? And why? How much of a mental toll does it take on the body, on the brain actually?
So yeah, I can always note when a depressive episode's about to kick in. Purely because when PMS starts, I start to feel a little bit like I feel more sensitive. And I don't know, I can feel myself cry at things easier than before. But it does take a mental toll when I'm not actively like dealing or addressing the things I'm experiencing. So I try and avoid myself from like really leaving myself in those feelings. I acknowledge that yes, I'm PMSing on my period, and therefore I'm feeling the way I'm feeling because I'm literally, my hormones are fluctuating. But if there is something that's concerning me, then I will address it, but I just choose not to let it define me. So there are things that I'll do on my period, such as like every morning I'll go on to, there's this app called Headspace. So every morning it starts you off with like affirmations and the intentions of the day. And I at least do that twice a day when I'm on my period compared to once a day generally, because my period's doing the most. And so I try not to take what people say or people do to me on my period like too hard. Obviously, if someone does something really bad, then I'll be like, hey. But I choose not to make it determine or measure my worth,
Okay.
So it is tough. And I also, what I do now is that before I used to just like not acknowledge my feelings, but now I'm like, okay, if my body's saying I need to cry, let me put on that Drake album and I'll cry. If you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll just cry and I don't know why, but I'll cry. And I'm like, okay, so what will make me feel better? Ice cream. I'll have ice cream. I just think it's just listening to your body more, listening to what your mind is telling you, and then just going for it. Yeah.
So you go around the country doing period workshops, right? How much do people know or not know, like especially women from around the country, about their health in general when it comes to their menstrual cycle?
Here's a lot of work that needs to be done within sexual and reproductive health, because yes, my work speaks solely to periods, but you'll find that your periods will always have some form of connection to why did I experience this form of discharge, or I realized, or I saw that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially within the education sector, where young girls go through puberty and they don't know why. And puberty is a very awkward phase. You're growing these things and you're just like, what's going on? And then
things are literally popping out.
Things are popping. Hair is coming out of place. You don't know what's going on. And no one's telling you. And that's the reality for many children in this country, especially for the boy child. No one is telling you that what is going on with you is normal. And also no one is telling you how to manage it and how to deal with it. So when it comes to periods in particular, we also have an issue in this country where access to general practitioners or gynecologists are very expensive. So often what people then tend to do is they just tend to keep the information to themselves, or keep what they're going through to themselves until they hear, oh, someone's doing a workshop or there's a nurse that's coming, and then they'll deal with that. But that's not as frequent as it should be. Women in particular have to be having annual checkups with the gynecologist like once a year. Just to make sure that everything's fine, just to make sure that in terms of the development, the fertility, everything's fine. But there are literally women in this country who don't even know the difference between the different colors of period blood and what is normal and what's not. There are women who feel that when they experience period clots, they think that there's something wrong with their body. There are women who literally will go through pain, severe pain, and think It's our period. I need to get over it.
Yeah.
So there's something that we need to be doing more of in normalizing what's normal when it comes to our periods and what's not. And I always tell someone, always just have a period diary. So you can download it on your phone, or you can even have a calendar, physical calendar. But when you are menstruating, every day just say, okay, today I experienced this, today I experienced this, today, next day I experienced, so that the next cycle that comes through, a next period that comes through, if you notice that you have gray blood, you've never had gray blood, then you need to see a doctor.
Yeah.
If you know that you're having clots that are larger than a 5 rand coin, you need to see a doctor.
Yeah.
If that's accompanied with debilitating pain, you need to see a doctor. So there's just things that we need to normalize in terms of what's normal in our period and what's not. And that information is not as accessible as possible, because when you do Google your period symptoms, it's either you're dying, you're pregnant, or you have cancer.
On WebMD especially.
Guys, it's weird. It's weird.
Okay, one last topic,
Yes.
and then we can close
Let's go.
Periods and pregnancy.
Okay.
Right? Because most of the time when you're having your period, it's a sign that you're not pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Has it ever happened that somebody gets a period and they're pregnant?
There's a show on TLC called I Didn't Know I Was Pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay. And women would literally say, I every month had my period, to only find out that there wasn't, because remember, what's normal and what's not. What's normal when you are having your period is you have that consistent flow of period. What's not normal in certain cases is when you experience spotting. So you'd see a few drops of blood and you think, oh, that's my period, everything's fine. But what happens is that in these cases, women were experiencing spotting and not their period. And spotting is indicative that you were pregnant, right? But I think the craziest cases is when they're like, I didn't have any symptoms, I didn't see my belly grow until, there's the baby. And I don't know what the different factors are in terms of maybe with the type of birth control they were on, etc. But with periods and pregnancy, yes, when you are menstruating, you are not pregnant. But if you do have sex on your period, you need to remember that sperm can live up to from 3 to 7 days within the vaginal canal, right? So let's say you have your period on your 5th day of your period, the guy ejaculates, and then your period finishes on the 7th day. Now you think, oh, he ejaculated, everything's fine, I'm not going to get pregnant. Nope. The sperm will live, come through.
It's just been camping.
It's camping.
Just waiting like,
it's camping.
Yeah.
But when you are pregnant, you definitely will not experience a period. But if you do experience any form of bleeding, then you have to see your doctor just to make sure that it isn't any form of miscarriage or anything that's wrong with your pregnancy. So they just they're things like that in terms of what's normal and what's not that needs to be normalized. But yeah, I've heard the craziest stories of how people are like, I had sex on period 6, and then the next period they're like, my period didn't show up. Like,
It's because you did that thing.
You did the things to make the things to be down.
You didn't strap it up. That's the problem is there.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's it for me. I mean, I hope I asked all the right questions.
You did.
I hope I really did all that, because I am definitely smarter for it.
Yeah.
I told you that I'm going to be very selfish when it comes to this show, because also I wanted to know.
Yes.
I want to know.
Is that a Joe song? I remember. Yeah. I love Joe.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it from me, Mo, on the Health Fix. Like, today's guest was Candice Chirwa. And we were talking about period health. Anything from sex, cravings, e-wallets, and everything else. Next week on the Health Fix, I'm going to try to get an employee well-being strategist to come into the show to talk about employee health or employee wellness, especially during the times of COVID. See what's going on there. So that's it from me today on the Health Fix with Mo. See you next week. Second off.